Hi, and this is my recipe for chocolate tart. One of my favorite desserts is a tart. They can seem really intimidating, but I wanted to show you how easy it was to make. Make sure butter and egg is room temperature, because if you use room temperature butter with cold eggs, they don't mix well together. When you mix butter and egg, you can use hand mixer or whisk. But once you add flour, you should switch to spatula, because you don't want to create a lot of gluten, because the cookie dough will become tough and hard if you overmix. Some baking recipes say to leave the butter at room temperature, but they don't mention that eggs should also be room temperature, which is very important in recipes like this one. You also want to rest the dough for 30 minutes so it relaxes the gluten, and also the dough is really soft, so you want to make the butter a little harder and it's easier to roll it out. If the dough breaks when you are molding it, it's okay. You can patch it with leftover dough. Make sure to poke holes so that the dough doesn't puff up. If you make something difficult to make and you make it really well, it can boost your confidence. So this tart is great for any beginner cooks who wants to challenge themselves a little bit. Also, I used instant coffee in this recipe because it kind of gives a nice bitterness and a flavor that balances out with the sweetness of the chocolate so that the tart doesn't become overly sweet. But if you don't like coffee, you can totally skip this step and it will work just fine. It's just a flavor preference. When you're pouring wet ingredients into the chocolate, pour everything at once, then count 30 seconds, and then start mixing. It makes really nice shiny chocolate filling. Also make sure to use good quality dark chocolate because this recipe is very simple, so quality is very important. So when you bake it, make sure to take the tart out when the center part is slightly jiggling, because if you overcook it, the chocolate filling starts cracking. Shake a little bit, and if the center slightly jiggles, that is when you have to take out from the oven. This recipe I learned from a pastry chef I used to work with at the restaurant in LA. So it's totally restaurant quality dessert, and you can impress anyone who loves chocolate. This chocolate tart is silky and rich, so you will be satisfied just like tiny slice. Japanese people, including me, are obsessed with seasons. Cherry blossom season is such a short amount of time, so from the end of March to beginning of April, a lot of people go for picnics, hiking, and have a party under the cherry blossoms. It's my favorite season, and I miss Japan so much, especially around this time of the year, because LA has no seasons. I think our ancestors started to preserve these beautiful flowers so they could enjoy it longer. Traditionally, raindrop cake, in Japanese we call mizushingen mochi, it's made with agar-agar. Agar-agar is a jelly-like substance made from algae. So unlike gelatin, it's vegetarian. Agar itself has no flavor, so raindrop cake tastes like sugar water jello. So pour your favorite syrup on top. Japanese people also value beautiful looking desserts and food. No offense to your brownies or chocolate chip cookies. Those are delicious, but maybe not quite as visually pleasing. You are also eating with your eyes, and this raindrop cake is a perfect example. The cherry blossoms are encased in a drop of water. It reminds me of cherry blossom on a rainy day. So a few years ago, there was a trend where you roll up apple slices onto a pastry and made a little tart. So I was wondering if there was anything I could make that would look pretty like that. And I came up with this idea using crepes instead of pastry. I wasn't sure if it's gonna work first, but I tried it anyways. And when I think of crepes, my favorite filling is strawberry and whipped cream. So instead of apples, I decided to use strawberries. The important thing about making crepes is rest the dough for at least 30 minutes because we are mixing with milk and flour, which creates gluten, and you don't want to make chewy and rubbly crepes. If you want, you can also rest it overnight and make it the next day. I chose cream cheese filling because it's a little thicker, so easy to work with. You are ending up making a bunch of crepes for this recipe, and that will take time, but I also think it's fun as well. So I tested this and made a pretty small version that was really cute. But when I make dessert, I usually want to share, so I don't want to make it just for myself. When you're making at home, it's a little bit messy because you're spreading cream onto the crepe and rolling it up. But it's worth the effort and worth the mess because it's really pretty, and I'm sure whoever you're going to give it to will be super impressed. Make sure to cut the strawberries very thin. It's similar to a crepe cake because it's layered, but just a different presentation because the crepes are vertical instead of horizontal. So instead of stopping making small little tart, I was just kept rolling and rolling and rolling, and I ended up making a large crepe cake. I think rolling it up is the most fun and difficult part because it's kind of like building a snowman. It's the same cake all the way through, it just gets bigger. Also, after you make this rolled crepe big enough, then you can start layering it on the side instead of rolling them. What you end up with is a super pretty roll of crepes all standing up with strawberries kind of looking like a flower, which is why I called this a rose crepe cake. This is a perfect dessert to bring an afternoon tea party or just to make with your friends sometime. As I mentioned earlier, Japanese people are obsessed with seasonal ingredients. Pumpkin and chestnut flavors are very popular during the fall season. We used kabocha pumpkins for our video. Kabocha is the most popular pumpkin in Japan. They are sweet and drier texture than butternut squash, perfect for baking and cooking, and I love using them. Kabocha is getting popular in America. I can find them in grocery stores easily. Japanese people have started celebrating Halloween, but Halloween in Japan is more popular among adults, dressing up in costumes, not for trick-or-treating. Some of the Western traditional holidays are misinterpreted in Japan. We celebrate Christmas, but it is more like a romantic holiday for couples. So this kabocha pumpkin pudding was made by Tasty Japan producer Saki, but she was struggling with unmolding the pudding. So I learned this cool trick on the internet. This is how to unmold pudding in a bun pan. So hold tight your bun pan and plate and you just spin. Okay, made me a little bit dizzy, but pudding is unmolded. So this pumpkin pudding, it's not your typical Halloween treats, but I think it's really pretty because of the color contrast, yellow and shiny brown. And also when you pour the chocolate, I feel like it looks like a spider web. So I think it's a perfect Halloween dessert. So I was looking on the internet and found this really cool cookie called Shaka Shaka cookies. The person made two cookies glued together and put sprinkles inside. So when you shake it, you can see the sprinkles. They used a special kind of sugar called palatinos, which is not sold in regular grocery stores. So I wanted to make it, but make it very simple so everyone can make at home. That's something I always wanted to include in my video. That's something everyone can make at home. That's the great thing about Tasty, I think. And making this cookie was very fun. I made this video for Tasty Junior initially, and I had the opportunity to work with kids. It was very fun to cook with little girls, especially the child actor I worked with. She was so impressed. She told me I could be a chef in the future and I should open a restaurant. And it was very cute and sweet. I was thinking maybe I could use store-bought candy and melt it. There is also another cookie called a stained glass cookie, which is very popular. So I used the Jolly Luncher instead of the special sugar and put two cookies together with white chocolate so it tastes better. When I was reading comments, I saw some audience said Jolly Luncher is too hard, so if you bite into it, you might break your teeth. But when you bake it, Jolly Luncher spread very thinly. So don't worry about breaking your teeth. You won't break your teeth. I'm looking out for you.
Oh, yes!